The first 3 weeks of the eruption here in Hawaii, crazy things would happen in the middle of the night. A new fissure would open up and it would threaten a new neighborhood. Thousands of people are evacuated from their homes. I started the Hawaii Tracker Facebook group to help people understand what's going on and get their questions answered.
Hey, how's it going? We're live. This is Fissure 20.
We had hundreds of people all throughout the neighborhoods sending in videos, articles, and images. We spend a lot of time making sure the accurate information gets out.
This is live. There's still lava moving.
They weren't just sharing a story, they were helping their neighbor. If a family was being evacuated, my group would just jump in and help out. It was huge. They were watching out for each other.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming. Thank you for the support from everybody.
As we go through this, we're growing closer together as a community. When tragedies like this strike, you really realize how much you need each other.
We are the Hawaiian Volcano Education and Resilience Institute, HVREI for short. A lot of people know us from the 2018 eruption of Kilauea in the Lower East Rift Zone. Working under Hawaii Tracker on the Facebook group. Since then, we've been trying to carry on and take the lessons, the hard lessons that were learned during that eruption and try and prepare for the next major disaster that comes to our island.
Yeah, so we do that through two different programs. One is volcano education, and the other part is digital resilience, which we address through online groups on social media. So the way the two programs work together is that the social media networks end up being a distribution pathway for all the information. And having that network in place means we can provide more than just volcano education, but any other preparedness information as well.
What we were working for really came about in the Mauna Loa eruption in 2022. Within hours of that eruption starting, we had the mayor, Mitch Roth, we had USGS HVO Ken Hahn on the stream trying to help flush out a little bit of the ongoing because it's so new. It's completely different from our previous major eruption, which was 2018.
One of the things that Talmadge and I were talking about was how do we deal with social media? It was something we needed to figure out and get right. Our job is to get information to the public and make sure that the public get it as well as possible and as correctly as possible. When Philip and Dane started coming to and live streaming the meetings, it was great because we were reaching more people than we normally would. So when the eruption actually happened, we had this relationship. The interviews we did during the eruption, the most fun ones were the ones with Philip and Dave because they were more relaxed and we knew we were getting to the local community and people were asking questions. So those were the best, I think. I just want to really give a shout out to those guys and how we worked as a team on this eruption. It really worked out well and we got to a lot of people we wouldn't have normally gotten.
Aloha, everyone, and welcome to our Hawaiian Volcano Tracker. Today is Thursday, August 7th, 2025. Kilauea has finally had its episode 30, following its longest pause of over 2 weeks. So we will recap that today. How are you doing, Dane? How's your week been?
Doing pretty good, yeah. Just getting everything sound. We have had some technical difficulties today, So hopefully we have that all sorted out, and Phil's have some of his own. I've had some of my own, but we're here now, and hopefully everything just goes without a hitch.
Yeah, we'll see if the internet powers that be will ease our path today or not. We'll see. We'll do what we can.
No.
So yeah, it's been another week. A lot of waiting this past week, Dane. Finally, it came yesterday morning, early morning, Wednesday. And yeah, not the highest fountains we've seen once again. And so we'll summarize this and get into it here in our update. Anything you want to add before we get into it?
No, but if anybody has any comments, questions, things along those lines, go ahead and put them in the chat, and we'll try and get to them in our Q&A.
All right, I'm going to try to get into it and not dally too much in case something happens. So let's switch our screens and let's get into it here now.
Yep.
All right. Okay. Yes, here. Aloha, everyone. This is our Hawaiian Volcanoes summary for August 7th, 2025. Kilauea's episode 30 arrived early Wednesday morning around 1 a.m., following its longest pause of about 15 days. The fountains were vigorously active for about 12 hours, but only reached heights of about 300 feet or 90 meters, which is the second successive episode with lower fountains following the previous 7 that had reached over 1,000 feet. What you see here is the time lapse from the KW camera showing the outburst of lava from the north vent visibly here and spreading across almost all of the inner crater floor over the course of 12 hours here. And if we look at the B1 camera, which is from the reverse angle, more from what a visitor might see perspective, you can see the lava emerging from the far side of the crater and wrapping towards the near side over the course of the day here. And once night falls, you see these overturning of the lava surface, given the thickness that it's pooled here on its eastern side. So a lot of lava has come out. We don't have a final estimate of volume yet and eruption rates, but we can see that there was a lot of lava that came out. What was unique in this particular episode was the emergence of another fissure that occurred up the back wall of the crater on the southern side. So the north vent is here, the south vent's obscured just behind it. And so some distance to the south, we have this new fissure that was active for about 3.5 hours in this area of the southern crater wall. Here is a different view from the V2 camera showing the main vent complex here, north and south vents. And here off to the left on the screen, rising slightly up the wall of the crater, is the newest fissure of episode 30. Apart from that curiosity, the eruption progressed largely as usual, with lava coming out of the main vents, flooding across the raised parts of the crater floor and traveling a large distance to the east. We had both south vent and north vent active, the north vent dominant once again. And the main difference being the fountain is not reaching those great heights and bursting out the new fissure. If we look at the ground tilt monitors, we can see that we had a longer recharge period than usual. And at the very end, we had an increased inflation rate that potentially was associated with that new fissure opening up. We've also had quite a large deflationary drop. Over those 12 hours of eruption, the volcano released a lot of pressure and appears to have been recharging now. But perhaps because of this complexity that preceded episode 30 and the short time since it ended, we have no forecast from the USGS for another episode, although we are seeing the typical signs of recovery, just like previous 30. Over the past 3 months, you can compare the size of this drop as a little larger, and this length is a little longer as well. So here's a USGS update for today. Just recapping the fountain heights and timing, and awaiting more information to put out any further forecast. We did see a massive outpouring of gas from the satellite captures. This is the SO2 capture of the episode 30 output. You can see all this red cloud is the downwind concentration of SO2 through the entire atmosphere. So while the fountains were not very high, the gas did get into the atmosphere. And even though it has blown off largely, there are still appear to be some lingering effects here on the Kona coast, especially in the South Kona area, all through here. If we look at our VOG forecast dashboard, we can see that there is continuing weather blowing this gas that is now in the inter-fountain phase, still putting out emissions not as great as during the episodes, but still causing effects for the downwind population. As we have a larger weather system coming into our northeast, we expect this to be variable and change, but for now, there could be continuing effects for a little while still. Seismically, earthquakes have been pretty low, continuing here in Kilauea. We do have our Deep Pahala events still ongoing, South Flanks events ongoing, and we did have an extra small cluster of earthquakes at the summit that the USGS reports coincident with the opening of the new fissure. Overall, that was not enough to change our earthquake counts. They're still quite low when considered per week over the last year, with most of the action occurring in a buildup to this ongoing now 8-month-long summit eruption. Otherwise, the crater continues to oscillate and grow in horizontal extent and then shrink during the episodes and grow as it recharges. And that pattern continues. Whereas on the rift zone by Pu'o, we're still continuing to see contraction as both sides of the rift come closer together with no activity and no magma input into that area at present. That's the story on Kilauea. We do have an update from the USGS on Mauna Loa this week, the first start of the month. Mauna Loa's earthquake rates increased by 34%, recovering from the previous month's abnormal low. There are still clustering in the upper southwest rift with an increase of dispersed deeper events. They say the volcano remains quiet nonetheless in a pattern expected following its 2022 eruption. So we can look a little more closely at the earthquakes over the last month, dispersed over the map area of the summit here. And over the last 5 years, you see the rates are still quite low following the 2022 eruption that occurred right in there. What this refers to is, you can see in this depth versus time plot over the last year, is that we've had a cluster of smaller earthquakes over the previous few months with some of these scattered deeper events as well. So magma is still filling the volcano, causing small minor effects, but nothing to be alarmed about in the short term. And that's our Hawaiian volcano summary for this week. All right, so let's move on to our hazard summary here. Dana, am I coming through okay? If you have any issues with my connection so far, am I good?
You've been good so far. I hope it holds. I've had
Right.
some reoccurring issues pop back up, so we're hoping I hold too.
All right. Well, I made it through the first part, so at least we can all know what summary is. So let's get into some of the gas stuff here. And to start off, I'll play you guys this loop of the S2 camera showing the eruption that just occurred, and also the gas that blows back and forth left and right. So that was just the full sequence, day and night. Let me slow it down here for you guys, make it as slow as possible, and start it back over. So eruption starts at night. We see the gas is blowing up and to the left here. But as the sun rises, you see it kind of starts drifting more a little bit to this direction over here. So there is this period of time, 8, 9 a.m., where there is this variability in the wind direction. You can see it rising more vertically. I have not been in a position to really monitor if anyone is reporting any gas in the park. Have you guys heard anything about that, Dane, over this last eruption?
I did hear about Pele's hair making its way back into Mountain View area. Don't know about the gas.
Yeah, so maybe that.
But it's similar, I would assume. Seems like with the lack of the trade winds, it was able to waft a little bit around, find some different spots that maybe haven't seen in a couple months.
Makes sense, yeah. So I'm gonna play this again here, and you can see maybe when this gas is blowing a little more in this direction, that might be those periods of time when the place here might be carried towards the east, towards the mountain view area there. You see right there, the camera's all whited out. So clearly there were some variable winds there in the early parts of that eruption. We can look further afield at the KP camera on the side of Mauna Loa. So we can see here at night the burst upwards. For a large portion of that early morning, it does go to the southwest, but you see it does turn towards the camera right. And here comes towards us right now. Clouds come in, it's harder to see a little bit, but there you see the impact of it. And one other reason I'm playing this is you can see the full height of this plume, despite the low fountains of lava. There's still a great outburst of gas, which is more directly related to the amount of lava that comes out rather than the height of the fountain. So a lot of lava comes out, a lot of gas comes out also, and that can cause that big, tall gas plume as well. Luckily, it seems like it was going mostly up. Here's a view from the K2 camera of the Uekahuna overlook. Right through here, it does look like there might have been a couple of times where the plume drifts over the overlook over here, but for the most part, it seems like people were able to be there and walk around during the eruption as well. Going further back, let's go to Mauna Loa. So Mauna Loa, let me see if I have this on loop here. Mauna Loa, the eruption of Kilauea comes all the way in its back corner. I'll play it at this full zoomed out view to start. This is Mauna Loa summit, so 14,000 feet just below. And so we see the top of that cloud coming above this horizon. So once again, taller clouds. Perhaps not reaching the 20,000 we've seen recently, but you see it's definitely getting up there. And when you zoom it in, maybe you have a little better view if you're on a small device here. You can see that cloud bank rising above the southern rim of Mauna Loa here. So, and one more view of that. Let's go back to the Mauna Kea camera, which happened to also catch very clear skies. Right in here is where we're looking. Right there. There's Kilauea's plume coming up. And then you see the cloud bank coming in from unrelated weather there. So we'll do that again. Let's zoom it in. Try to zoom in here. Right. And there it is. You see the tall plume reaching those large heights, even without the high fountains there. So that's what we visibly could see from the gas. We can come back to our VMAP resource, the VOG Measurement and Prediction Project from the University of Hawaii at Manoa. And as usual, they are taking the emission concentrations and the current weather and producing a VOG forecast here. So my VOG forecast does not seem to be playing. Let's reload it. All right. And there it goes. So, all right, we have 1,500 tons per day as our emission source rate. So that's our average between episodes, not the full blast of the eruption itself. But you see it is still drifting to the southwest and wrapping around to the Kona side. Right? You see the darker oranges as the more intense concentration, but you see this grayer envelope as the area where all this stuff is dispersing. And we have it set right now to our SO2 pollutant, which is our pure gas form, with the understanding that as it travels through the air, it reacts and creates this SO4 sulfate aerosols, which can be more intense further from the source. And here you can see why we might still be having some of those readings in the South Kona area from this almost like a distillation, right? This reaction of the pure SO2 to create these particles. All right, so that's the forecast here. And back to our Purple Air Citizen Science Monitoring Network, which is a little slow here. Get this to reload once again too. This one's a little slow earlier as well. All right, so there it is. you can see a little more easily these yellows and oranges here on that Kona coast. I'm not sure about this one higher reading here. That might be something else. Remember, these PM 2.5 monitors are picking up all particles within that size range, whether they're created by the volcano or not. It could also be regular pollution from cars or wind or other sources as well. And interestingly, we can look further afield and see that the other islands look to be in the clear thus far as well too. So that's the purple air. I thought we could come to windy. It's been a little while and look at the whole Earth view here. And once again, our accumulation of SO2 above our island in the mid-Pacific here in the context of all the other global emissions of sulfur dioxide that are occurring. And so you can see that right now, our state of Hawaii has actual more SO2 concentration than all of China, which is a little bit crazy to think about here. Right. There was another eruption that occurred up here in Kamchatka following the earthquake last week. So that's interesting to see. There's a little bit extra SO2 up in here as well. So that's the windy layer. And remember, this is through the entire atmosphere. So this is not something you would necessarily be on the ocean surface or land surface and be able to detect this full concentration. That's everything in the sky above you in that area, all the way to the satellite. So the Mounts project is capturing these as well. So I have it set to our SO2 emission layer here on the captures. And so here we are today on the 7th, showing this lingering effect of the VOG still here offshore and a little bit offshore West Maui, Molokai as well. But if I come back in time, the capture from, it looks like this was a failed capture 5 minutes previous. Let's ignore that one. This one from yesterday is catching that full plume there. Okay, so that's connected to our windy.com layer we just saw for the whole atmosphere as well. So there it is. The gases documented for this episode. And hopefully we can mostly dodge the effects in future episodes like we did this time. Little Pele's hair is not great, but it's better than the massive impacts we were seeing during the high fountains. That probably was part of the effect as well. Lower fountains, therefore less stuff being shot as high in the air and less stuff to fall. Only the very lightest stuff like the Pele's hairs can waft upwards and get carried those great distances. All right, so that's our hazard summary. We'll move on to our observations. And we will do that starting with the USGS image release for their August 5th fieldwork. So they flew over with a helicopter over the summit. Here is a great view of the summit of Kilauea. All of this is what we call the main summit caldera, Kalaupele, right through there. In here is the inner crater of Halemaumau. All the black stuff is the recent lava flows. So that's our area of focus for all year thus far. And then beyond that, you can see Mauna Loa, a nice shield volcano here in the background. That's all Mauna Loa. And behind it over here is Mauna Kea in this right corner as well. So nice aerial views of the vent complex as well. You can see there the main complex right through there, the road that used to lead to the Halemaumau parking lot that collapsed into the crater with the cracks that impacted it there. And we also see this big blanket of fallout of this tephra, this grayish, brownish material that's all in the downwind area all through here. And what's fascinating to me here is that we actually see the whole side of the wall really plastered in the slope of tephra right here. And only a little chunk of it is a little window into the wall rock that's not been coated and maybe a little too steep still in this uppermost area to blanket it all the way across right through there. Unlike right here where you see it is actually draped all the way through. All right. So really fascinating to see this landscape changing month after month, week after week. And here, the USGS has a video of, which I'll show you in a minute, of when they flew over and looked into the North Pit and saw this lava pond within the pit, and saw it actually was moving and draining into a lava tube that went beneath the crust under a lava lake over in that direction over there. So get to the video in just a couple of seconds here, but just to finish off this series, they're also continuing to use laser rangefinders to measure heights of various features within the crater, and scanning all of the crater floor to continue to compile elevation models and volumes for each episode and all those kind of things that allow you to quantify what the eruption might be doing and how it might be changing, and ideally what we might expect next, right? Without having any single favored candidate. We usually have a range of things that could happen, and so that's still where we are today with this range of things that could happen, all within the historical context. So let's come to that video from the helicopter. Here it is right here. This starts off with a wider view as I fly over the crater. So there you see that inner crater, these cracks in the foreground right through here. That's all part of the 2018 collapse that formed this inner pit, which has now been refilled by lava from the last 7 years. So here they are flying down towards the north vent. See a lot of steam from the upper spatter cone. There is the pit, there is the pond, and there is the flow of lava into the lava tube beneath the crust of the lava lake. This is not something that we have seen documented before, at least to this extent, right? Maybe this has been happening, but it's been happening out of sight where we have no indication of it. And had the SGS not flown a helicopter and looked in and taken that video, we might have not known that was happening this time either. So it's great to have that extra piece of information there. So let's come back to our, let me start with this one. This is a KW camera. And what I've done here is gone back to 22nd, which was the day after episode 29. And so for these 2 weeks, I have taken 1 image per day at noon from this KW camera to start. And I'll play it in a loop here so we can try to see what is happening with the lake surface between these episodes. So at a glance, if I keep it at this zoom level, you don't see a whole lot. Maybe you see like the dancing bits of tephra up on the hillside with the wind blows these things around. It looks like they're like popcorning there on a surface. It's just moving. It shows you how much wind and movement of this loose material there can be, right, on a day-to-day basis. But otherwise, what we're looking for is more subtle. So let me zoom it in as far as I can here. We look really near the vent. There is a vent itself. That lake and lava tube were down in there. So that tube was flowing down in an area something like this, right? This is a channel that flowed through before. And if anything, what you can see is the sagging, right? You see like a little bit of movement of this material over here in the southwest quadrant of the crater. But you really see it looks like sagging with the center maybe right in here somewhere, but this whole area right through here seems to be sagging down, the surface dropping in elevation, visible from this camera that's miles away, right? So it might look like a little change, but that's likely dropping by yards or meters to cause that visible effect right there. So that's one area close by. We'll go a little further afield. Here's that next flat area that lava often ponds in, and you can see it also is dropping, right? So I have it on a loop, so it looks like it kind of jumps back up. That's just because the loop is restarting, right? So the net effect in this case is all sagging downwards right through there. And so the question naturally comes, where was the lava going that was going in the tube? Where could it be going? You would think that maybe if it was all happening under pressure, that it might be injecting under that crater and causing the crater to lift up. And we have seen that in the past, but we're not seeing it this time. So what seems like a better guess, it's still an educated guess, is that when you have all this degassing of the fresh lava from the recent episodes coming out, you're seeing areas where it is sagging, right, where it's unsupported and you're actually losing volume. But there might be other areas in here that are also losing gas and losing volume that might leave some space. And maybe that slow trickle of lava that we see over here, and pull us back to show us one more time. Maybe this slow trickle of lava is finding some of those spaces which is telling us that must be some space in there to fill passively without having to buckle the ground upwards. But also that this is a pretty small volume of lava trickling in there as well, or else it might have to force its way to push something out of the way. And there's not enough to do that as well. So that's the KW camera and the near vent view. And now back to the B1 camera from the far side of the crater, and same exercise, one image at noon each day for the last 2 weeks. We were just examining the near vent areas, which maybe you see a little bit here, right in here. There's that larger flat area we saw sagging right there. The near vent areas are kind of right around a cone, and I don't know if I can zoom in any more than this, but right in here, I see movement as well, like this whole zone dropping here. But usually this camera is better for looking at the closer by things on the far east side of the crater. So as I pan my way over here, you'll see that the main effect is once again this dropping down of the surface. Just to remind you, this is on a loop, and as such, when it restarts, it looks like it jumps back up, but that's just the loop starting. So really it's effective coming down. In many areas, not everywhere, it looks like there's a little ridge right in here that's not dropping down, right through there. But this side is dropping, this side is dropping, and this all follows that massive lava flow from episode 29, which also had lower fountains. And in general, when you have lower fountains, that means that less gas is getting blasted away from the lava, and it can actually mix into the lava a little bit more easily, which means the lava might be a little bit more gas rich, and therefore it can lose more gas, and it can settle and subside a little bit more than some other flows, perhaps. Right? So that seems to be what we're seeing here. In contrast, what we've seen in previous weeks, which is injection. We've in the past actually seen some of these areas bulging upwards as lava keeps injecting into these areas. So we're not seeing that here at all between 29 and 30. What is interesting is, speaking about this degassing effect, there are areas, like if we look right in here, this is a zone, I wish I could zoom it in more, but in my current setup, I cannot. Right in here, these are some of the remains of that September 2023 fissure, which had some massive 50, 60 foot tall cinder cones that have since been lifted with lava surface as it fills this area. And as they are loose cinder, it does allow the gas to escape through that rubble more easily than through something more consolidated, we'll call it. So really fascinating. You actually can see the white sulfate minerals growing in time lapse over the past 2 weeks right here, right? You see this kind of white appearing all around this cone right through there, and as the gas is escaping from this area. It's not the only place, but it's the most obvious place right there in the middle. When you pan it over here to the left, you can see right in here, we also see this growth of sulfur deposits over the last week. And a little bit in through here also, if you look closely at it's kind of a crack that runs something like that. Right in there is also some white appearing in the middle too. Right? I won't keep pointing out other areas, but just you see the pattern here already. And surface dropping, gas escaping, gas precipitate on the surface, all fits together in the same story. Okay, so let's go on to the next USGS photo release for our visual update. This is episode 30 itself. They have produced a new graphic for those who love the numbers. This has all the numbers on here. Right? So I will not go through all the numbers because that's kind of not the greatest use of our platform here, but you can see here 30 episodes. Highest fountains of lava, 1,250 feet. And yeah, historically, it's different from Pu'u'u and Kīlauea, which are the other two summit, well, not summit, the other two recent episodic fountaining eruptions. Okay, continuing. The USGS also has compiled this animated GIF from the S2 camera with one image a day over the 30 episodes. And what they're trying to show is the growth of the vent complex from originally that single fissure growing to several vents, north vent and south vent dominating, and then building that massive spatter and tephra cone, ramping up the southwest wall of the crater all the way up to here. A little bit grainy, I realize here, so I did find this other version of it here. Maybe not perfect either, but gives you the idea in a slightly different resolution there of that growth of the cone. So let's see, big, if nothing else, because it moves fast and it moves around a little bit, keep an eye on the height of this back wall and how it's changing very quickly through the very jerky animation here. So we'll move on from that. Let's come to the episode 30 itself, and let's play you guys the KW camera to start. So there is the outburst of lava. We're catching most of this close side of the crater here. See no tall fountains, big bursts moving through the day. Several channels coming through here. And even once the fountain's shut off, you continue to see movement, both in daytime and in nighttime, with some extra overturning events late in the night as well. So that's a KW camera. I have it starting on Wednesday itself, although it is worth noting that there were overflows from the vent the previous day, just before 6 a.m. on Tuesday, that put out some short flows for a very short time and then stopped for not quite the 24 hours, but until that following middle of the night. So that was the precursor activity. And then coming into this, I'll play it one more time. You can see that burst. And here in the background, you can see there is that, what I'll call for clarity today, even though there's no official name, I'll call it the extra south fissure there, because we have the southern vent, we have a northern vent, so maybe that can be the extra southern vent, because it can't get any further south than that and still be in a crater since it's up against the wall right there. Right, so, but maybe I'll zoom that into there. We can see that loop around and come up. Maybe. There it is, and see it produces this flow as well. It's a smaller flow than many of the rest, but it does contribute to this southern crater wall edge flow right through there as well. So we'll get some different views of that. We'll leave this view be for now. A lot of lava covering a lot of area of the floor. I haven't seen a final estimate, but I would guess this would be one of those 80 to 90% coverage of the crater floor.
So do you think it had more volume than the last ones, or about the same ballpark on the upper end of what we've seen so far?
It's completely a guess, but I'd say it's ballpark the same. Yeah, I don't see any evidence that it was any less necessarily. Yeah, so order of magnitude, I'd guess about the same. Yeah. It's not obvious like it was a lot smaller area and a lot smaller volume to go with smaller fountains, right? We look at this image, right. The entire image is covered in red, right? Lava covered the entire view, which we have not had that every single time either. Some of the higher fountains that shoot lava up out of the crater don't get quite this coverage. So I feel like it's ballpark the same, but we'll have to await the USGS.
Yeah. Would not be surprised if it was near the upper end of what we've seen so far in terms of volume.
Yeah, what we have seen, the pattern has been like the last one, the lava came out much more efficiently. So a lot of volume coming out really fast. And this duration was longer than the last one. So if we're efficient and we're lasting a long time, then I would guess you're putting out even more lava, right? And that's a pattern we've seen in the past is even though the volumes stay roughly the same episode to episode, there's some variation and they can trend upwards as you progress and develop a system before it resets, right? And so that's the big question now is how much do we reset it with this whole new change of a new fissure and what comes next? And we can talk about the context, but we'll have to wait and see. We don't really know. But there's an F1 camera. Play it one more time there. Same views of KW. There's that small fissure in the back and overturning lava surface there. And yeah, thermal view. So coming to the B1 camera once again, this is on the back end, on the far side of the crater. There's our fissure over there. And with this new flow, you see it's joined by the other vents, and that feeds this kind of counterclockwise boundary flow through here, right? And there are other ones coming from the other side as well. But ultimately, you'll see that this whole side of the crater on the east side is all repaved with lava. You see just a little bit of the glow as the lava is cooling here. And so what I'm going to do now is zoom in to this far eastern side. And you can see the extent of the flows. And so you see we got all the way to the edge of where we've been recently. We did not really advance up onto this ramp of down drop block any further than we had previously. And there are, let me put this again. There are those two bits of the cones from September 2023 still present right in here. This high ground right through there. You can see that's one of our landmarks of when lava comes and buries this area to the east here. So it's coming right to the edge, right to the edge. And it's hard to get any scale in here. This crater is massive, right? But those hills that we saw right in there, those are probably 50 or 60 feet tall. So really huge features to look at there. Zoom out view. So like maybe there's a spot in here that doesn't get covered in lava. Most of the crater floor seems to be overrun. All right, so coming to our live stream cameras, the V1, V2, and V3. We'll start with the V1 and play you guys this compilation. So what I've done is taken the actual live feed to show you guys that fissure actually opening up over time. Right? It's happening at the same time as we have the north vent increasing in vigor. You see, there it is at the same time. This is the back fissures opening up. So I'm going to pull this back one more time, and now I'm going to zoom in way back in here. So you can see how the fissure is climbing the wall, opening up a new vent, a new vent, new vent, new vent, new vent, new vent. See that? The progression as it worked its way up the crater wall over a course of maybe 15 or 20 minutes there. And following that, I've sped it up more. So here is that fissure over the next several hours, still active. And it begins around 1:10, 1:15 a.m., more or less in that range. And you see it's active for much of those first few hours, at the same time as the north and south vents through here. You see more lava is coming from the north and south vents, but it is still putting out flow. It's not just a perspective here, but also the size of the vents. So here we are coming to 3:30. The fissure is still active, dancing around back in there. Coming to 4 o'clock, it seems to be diminishing a little bit. We're starting to see a decrease from the upper vents. And we see continuing from the southern vents until here we are, 4:30, 4:40. It seems to be just about all the way shut off, even as the north vent and south vents continue. And the rivers of lava across the crater floor still continue as well. So that's the V1 recap here. And really fascinating. I think after this sunrise comes through, I can pull it back and let you guys see that opening of the fissure once again. I think that's fascinating. A thing to be caught on camera. We rarely catch one of those. Maybe more and more now with more time-lapse cameras deployed all over the place, but like some good examples from Iceland, for example. But here in Kilauea, this was a good one. You see there it is. It opens on the crater floor to start. Starts climbing the crater wall. Higher, and higher, and higher. And another one. That's it there. So really hard to judge the elevation of this vent compared to what we have going on in here. But regardless of that, clearly this is the easier path out. and this did not last the full episode even. So what's some different points of view here? Let's come take you guys to the V2 camera. So here we are looking in early morning, the first overflows, the north vent, and then we pan out and see here on the left that fissure system come and go right there. And then by evening, only glow is visible. So once again, there's the actual, oh, that's not what I was looking for. I'm going to put this on here once again, just to show you guys one more time, just that segment of the fissure itself actually active. So just a little bit of a freeze frame here, time lapse of this is the best I could capture with issues today. There you have that fissure, right, on a crater floor, climbing up the wall. And that's the area where it was active through there, feeding that flow. And from this perspective, you can see more clearly the relative size of the channels and volume of lava coming out as well. So that's the V2. And the V3 will play here as well. So this angle, north vent, south vent. And here, just out of sight behind this rock is where we have our new fissure. But you do see the glow of it, and you see the flow come across the bottom of the screen here, even as we have that other view of the north and south vent complex in the background. So interesting. We never know what there is going to be to see, and I'm glad to see the USGS have all these cameras. Normally, the V3 is one of our better views. In this case, it was the worst view, just because it so happened to be just out of sight of the camera and what was happening down there. But yeah, another amazing episode of Eruption from Kilauea. I thought maybe at this point in time I could just add a little bit of historical context. I was hoping to expand this, but I'm not sure how much time I want to spend on it without all the prep. So what I'm trying to get to is this paper that's Special Information Report 2018-5107, which is a pool eruption, episodes 21 and on, right? So there's this whole section of fissure outbreaks. We have visited this before on our updates to you guys, but it's worth noting that during a pool eruption, there were brief fissure or satellite event outbreaks in 7 of the 27 high fountaining episodes. Actually, it was nine of the first 27 ones there. 'Cause there's 2 extra before this report. So let me skip past these graphs here and let me get to this is the main plot to show you guys right here. Let's get this a little bit more centered. All right, so what you're looking at is the area of Pu'o'o. Cinder and spatter cone is about that circular shape right through there. And you see these lines are areas where fissures occurred. So these are fissures that occurred prior to the Pu'o'o eruption in 69 in association with the buildup to Mauna Ulu, 68 and 69 right through here. And then what you're looking at with these colored lines are the actual episodes. So 4 and 11, brown and green. See, those ones are basically in there, almost in the area. They are within the area that becomes the cone. As they are early episodes, especially this 4th one, you may not have this full size structure quite yet, but it goes to show that you can have little segments of fissures there, right? Moving on, 21, 25 is the orange and blue. So there's orange, and then you have some of these dark blue over here starting to escape the cone. And you can see short segment outside of the actual vent complex in that case, right? But kind of right next to it. And there's 28 and 29, the light blue and the black there. So all through here. The light blue one was a special one that kind of went a long way uprift. And the black one over here also with light blue. And of course, the biggest, longest one to the east is this yellow one. That was 48 A and B, right? That's the one that actually ended the pool eruption and led to the Kupainaha phase of eruption that went from 86 to 92. So what I'm trying to show here is really that it's pretty common to have, during these high fountain episode eruptions, to have these extra cracks occurring. And in the case of Pu'o'o, this was happening with the same structure of the rift zone. Right? This is the way the rift zone is oriented. So that's the natural grain of the land, natural weakness of the land. Every fissure has some close relationship to that angle of the rift zone itself, right? So as pressure was too great, then it would work out into those features, north and south. Which is to say, and what I should say is that, and every time until 48, the eruption went back to the center vent complex, right? So all these other ones, all the ones except the yellow one, and the yellow one was an event that we'll look at here in a little more detail. The ending of Pu'o'o was a smaller volume of lava that came out. And so you had this combination of extra cracks, more lava still underground, and that might have been a transition from the high fountaining phase to the lava lake phase, which followed for the next several years. So let me show you guys this table right through here. Those are all the episodes that show different fissures, and you can see the duration of them. Ours lasted about 3.5 hours, and so you can note here that in some cases, they last the entire episode. But if you look at 21, 25, all these ones here in the middle, that's about 3 hours, a little over 3 hours, a little under 3 hours, a little over 3 hours, a little under 3 hours, a little under 3 hours. Here's an unusual one, the 17 days. And that was something weird that was different, right? And from there, things get a little bit more variable. So what I'm trying to show is there are analogs, what we have here. The big difference, of course, for us is we're not on a rift zone. We don't have that same kind of grain. We have this caldera structure instead. So it's not so easy to just crack and keep going down somewhere else, because our ring faults are bounding our zone of collapse. And so what you saw today was a fissure going up the crater wall and then stopping. And so that's the kind of thing we can look for and think about that could happen moving forward. So coming to episode 48, the fissures at the beginning of episode 48 were apparently the result of a rupture in a Pu'o'o conduit that was large enough to divert all of the magma rather than only some of it, as happened with the fissures in earlier episodes. And unlike before, that diversion was permanent and brought a close to the episodic high fountaining. So I show this to say that without the fissure being able to actually take the lava somewhere else, right? So unless you have a fissure that somehow can escape this caldera structure, then I personally don't see how you could have the same kind of evolution as you saw in Pu'o'o right there, right? You have to have some kind of change from below, pushing out and causing a crack to escape one way or the other. So really hazy there, what to expect. But I would say that the history would lead us to suggest that most likely that fissure we saw in episode 30 shuts off and we don't see it active again. But we'll have to wait and see. So we'll leave that for our historical context today, and I'll just finish off our visual observations here with these live, well, maybe not quite as live, views of Kilauea right now. Here's a V3 camera showing this massive degassing. Let's turn to V2 and let's get it a little bigger on the screen for you guys and make sure it's live. There, a wider view from V2. And we'll check in on the V1 as our final camera here. A little earlier, not as much gas from that particular area. There's a little more now. So, yep, really interesting there. And with that, we will take our mid-break. Pass it to you guys.
All right. Thank you, Phil. And we will get you back in here in a minute. Tag in Lou. All right. Welcome in, Lou.
Thank you. We made it. We made it midway. Nice work, Phil, holding it together.
Everything's working so far.
Right? We weren't sure for a while. All right, let's keep moving so we can we don't drop this. Let's get me in here. There we go. All right, what's happening around the rock today? We do have some extra closures going on up at the park. Oh, let me check. Who do we have today? We have Carrie. Welcome to our interpreters. Thank you for doing this. Hope you got your icy hot. Let's go. There's our lava viewing locations that are spread out all over the park. You really can't go wrong. Phil was showing where the lava was spreading across the caldera floor, and that really gives you another opportunity to see how magnificent the caldera is when the whole floor is full of lava. So you definitely want to spread out while you're up there. Stay on the trails, though. We've had some incidents up there, and it's always better to be safe than sorry. The roundabout is coming along. I have not heard any negative, only positive. So I'm glad everybody's enjoying it and traffic is moving through it. Our Nene are still up there and they are grouping up. So please pay attention to them. You'll see cones along the side of the road. You'll see some white barriers along the side of the road. Those are to keep people from parking. Please don't move them. I have heard of people trying to move cones so they could park. Just wait. Somebody will pull out soon. There are Nene that could be just resting in that area or nesting. You don't know if kids are running around, and the cliffs, the edges do just drop off in certain areas. This is our Kilauea Temporary Military Camp Welcome Center. That was a mouthful. This is temporary while we're redoing the visitor center up there. And there's a map to it. You can't miss it. It's on the way past a couple lookouts. So you could always stop by there first if you need to. Here are our closures. The Helena Poly one, I think, is our first up on. Nope. Temporary closure of the Kilauea Iki Trail Western Switchbacks. Yvonne hooked us up with these pictures since she's always hiking those areas. The Western Switchbacks of Kilauea Iki Trail are temporarily closed for repairs Monday through Thursday, 6 a.m. to 4 p.m., but open to hikers at all other times. The rest of the trail remains open, and they're shooting for the 30th of September. Mauna Loa Road is still closed, and campgrounds remain open, but campfires and open flame cooking fires are prohibited. Propane and gas cooking stoves are allowed. You will know that there are several areas that are exceptionally dry right now on parts of the island, so please be careful out there. Backcountry hikers still need a permit. And this was new this week. The Helena Poly Road closed to vehicles. Helena Poly Road in Hawaiʻi Volcanoes National Park is partially closed to motorized vehicles, but open to pedestrians and bicycles. The closure is from the gate past the Mauna Iki Trail to Helena Poly Overlook. If you are attempting to hike that from the road out there, know that it is hot and it is dry and it's a long hike. So be prepared. We prefer to
plenty
drive.
of wind. There
And
can be
a lot of
plenty
wind.
of wind too, right?
Always wind, right? Always.
If you're hiking in with some bunch of stuff, it might be fine when the wind's at your back, but when you're walking into a headwind with it, it can be rough.
Yeah, that's that wind burn you're going to get on that one. And Life on the Edge is still the only park that's listed on their website. I would recommend going into the Kilauea Welcome Center at KMC and talk to the rangers and see if they just happen to have something else going on that they don't have listed. They may have it. And you can get notified when the next episode happens. I heard Phil mention that everything seems to be looking like we'll have an episode 31 at this point. So sign up to our email list at hvreei.org/subscribe, and we'll send you a notification when that happens. Also, Dane, here you go.
Nope. We'd like to thank everybody for tuning in today, but we'd also like to thank County of Hawaii through the Bye Bye Grant program, helping support this program as well as previous support for other programs as well. So we appreciate them. And if we do also take donations, from viewers like you. And we appreciate all the likes, subscriptions, the shares, everything along those lines. We did have a couple of donations come through. Wanted to shout out Raven, longtime supporter, as well as Norm, another longtime supporter, both with $10 super chats there. And then Amelia with a NZ199 and the sticker. All right. Appreciate all the support there. We also do take donations over on our website, hvre.org/donate. You can see it on screen there. And yeah, that'll do it. We appreciate everybody tuning in today. Make sure to like, share, all that stuff. I know everybody mentions it, but it does help on that with algorithm. And with that, I think we are through it, and I will get Phil back in here. Thank you, Lou.
Right on. You got it.
All right. And then welcome back, Phil.
Guys.
Oh, you are muted. There you are.
Exciting to see the park progress over there. It's nice, and yeah, still great lava viewing for anyone who's not too overwhelmed with trying to get up there. It seems like it's going to be getting easier and easier and roundabout. So great to hear about all of that.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll move on to our monitoring section here, and we'll start off with a review of the text updates. The USGS began the sequence on Monday, August 4th, 7:33 a.m., where they actually note precursor activity began 5:51 a.m. on Monday, August 4th, with short flows ending at just before 6 a.m. That was the first notice, and then there was a big gap since that first one was put out. Daily update that day notes that sporadic activity began but had ended by that point in time. Moving forward to Tuesday, they do note there was strong glow with rare spattering, but no additional overflows. However, they noted the lava was visible 5 to 10 meters, 15 to 30 feet below the top of the vent. And let's see here. The helicopter overflight of the north vent confirmed the lava within that distance. Lava degassed and feeding a low volume into a lava tube inside the odor flows in the crater. So, we saw the video of that before, with no other breakouts or movement on the crater floor. So it was pretty quiet overall, right? So just noting that helicopter flight in there. Okay, then coming to Wednesday morning, 1:24 a.m. Lava became visible in the vent at 12:55 a.m., began vigorously overflowing 1 minute later. And they noted that was a start of continuous low-level precursory activity. They noted the south vent began at 1:12 a.m. That's about the same time as we saw the onset of that extra south fissure as well, which at this point in time, 1:24 a.m., I don't know if it made it into this particular report here. No, it comes in the next one. So that was the essentially the second precursory activity notice here. And then we had our notice for aviation, the VONA, the VONA, paired with the volcanic activity notice, the VAN as we call it, that was issued at 2 a.m. Hawaiian time, noting that the vigorous fountaining began at about 1:20 a.m. So just as they were pushing that publish button on the previous post, and they noted was producing fountains up to 300 feet. At that early point in time, it only covered 20% of the floor. And it did note there was a line of small fountains that formed south of the old south vent area that are producing lower volume flows. This appears to be a new vent for this eruption and seems to be associated with a cluster of earthquakes, small earthquakes, just south of Halemaumau. So that was the key observation there noted in this event. And then the event occurs as we've recapped it visually. We do get a daily update at 10 a.m. also issued. That doesn't add much more apart from now we're up to 60% of the floor crater of the crater floor covered, and that new fissure remained active until 4:40 a.m. Hawaiian time. Right. So by this point in time, they had likely realized that the vigorous fountains were occurring, and were not going to get very tall, and did include a new fissure which had begun and ended by this point in time. So they did note here a little bit more details. That new fissure produced flows slowly diminished after 4 a.m., shutting off by 4:40. It was associated with a cluster of 10 small earthquakes just south of Hale that lasted from just before 1 a.m. until about 1:30 a.m. Also, there was a short inflationary tilt excursion of less than 2 microradians at the Sandhill tilt meter during that same 30-minute period. So we can look for that in our signals here shortly, but you can see they're noting it in detail in their observations. So that was 10 a.m. and the eruption would come to a close around 1 p.m. Hawaiian time after 12 hours of fountaining, which prompts another pair of aviation notice and activity notice, which essentially say the same information and for different audiences, one for the aircraft and one for everyone else. Noting that fountains reached up to 90 feet, 300 meters during the episode. And that's really all we see here that's new. Today's update, if we look a little more closely, they note when the episode ended, how high the fountains reached, that there was a new fissure, that emissions decreased, and lava may continue to move and cool and solidify. If we keep going, it's a lot of the same language as before. Into the analysis, they note just the history of patterns. And so what you might notice missing through here is any of this mention of, we see glow again, we see tremor again, we see inflation again. We think it's going to keep coming. They've actually not said that this time. And maybe that's because of the combination of how short a time it's been to really collect that information, but also that the build up to 30 was different from anything we've seen thus far with that new fissure, right? With the extra long ramp up, right? Maybe that puts a little bit more variance in what the expectation is. And maybe you don't know if it's really going to go the same again or not. We'll have to wait and see. So we like to point out these patterns, not just so much of what is said, but also what has been removed from the update. And that's just something that's very notable here after episode 30 thus far. Let's wait until tomorrow. Maybe it'll get updated and we'll have had time to process that data and say at least that we think another one is coming. Even if I imagine that the timeline is going to be something they're more careful with, given how big a wrench this last one threw, right? Because last week's update a week ago, we were saying, oh, it's going to come anytime between last week when we were doing update Thursday and previous Sunday. And it actually took it until Wednesday to do something. So it was a little outside of the norm there for that reason. And you can imagine if you're trying to be conveying confidence in your bracket, then maybe you pull back a little bit if that's less predictable. So that's the update for today. And they're a little behind. You can see as well on the information table. In fact, if I come to this table here, as of a few minutes ago, we're still not showing episode 30 listed on here, right? So that means we still don't have any volumes of eruption either, not mentioned in text or in the tables. And so we'll update the tables that we do have for you guys and some of the maps, but we don't have the full analysis that we could bring as far as how much lava is coming out and how fast. And how does it compare to previous episodes? We'll try to do that next week after that number is presumably released. But to start, there is a new eruption map that was put out after episode 29 on August 1st. it looks very, very similar as far as the area of lava that's covered, where the vents actually are. And really the unique thing that they're noting here is total volume of lava. We're up to 34.5 billion gallons, 130 million cubic meters, right? The average elevation, thickness of lava and extent, all that updated here. So this is no big surprise, or we're right on pace within 1% of our previous estimates. So there's no need to really go into that further. One thing that I was curious about, and it's hard to tell really from here, is where that new vent might actually be, right? It's not on this map, so on our next map will likely have that on there. There is our north vent, south vent, and I would say our extra south vent. If I had to guess, I would put it somewhere like in here-ish, something like that, right? Not quite clear how far up the wall it comes. We see some contour lines through here, but we can't really compare that to this because all the new land is not contoured, whereas really the true contour of like this, call it this, I don't know what that is there, the 3450 line or something, might actually come and like do something like this now. And then reconnect back up here, right? So we're missing that to really compare elevation of what's over here to what's over here. The closest we can get is the image that was released with thicknesses through episode 24. And if we come into here, you could combine the thickness with the previous elevations and get to a new contour map. And maybe if Mike Zoller gets word of this in any which way, he'll be so kind as to produce us a contour map that combines those previous two, that gives us contours all the way through here with some clearly arbitrary moment in time, because things are changing all the time, right? So not quite clear how high they are relative to each other, but they're both in this very southwest corner of the crater. So fountain heights, we can compare those. So this is there is our maximum fountain heights for all 30 of our episodes. Here we are, just over 300 feet or 90 meters right there. You can see that's the second one in a row that's shorter than these previous 7 that were all 1,000 feet, 300 meters or higher, right? You can see there was a pattern of smaller ones in between these two pulses and also at the beginning, but having 2 in a row towards the back end does seem a little unusual, and it does suggest some changing dynamic of the actual conduit itself. Since, as we mentioned earlier, we don't believe there is any less lava coming out. It's just doing so in a different, it's just doing it in a different way, right? Not shooting as high in the air, which means us bubbling, catching more of the gas through the low fountains and spreading out across the crater floor. And also, I think that new fissure is something to keep coming back to. That's different from all the other ones. We've had little blowouts near the north vent, near the south vent. With our pool analogy, those would be like the little fissures that occur kind of in the crater itself. But now we've had one that actually went outside of that zone to the side. And so that's a little bit more interesting. And can it do that again? Could it use that same path again? Or could it just build enough pressure to crack somewhere else as it just did, right? All things I'm curious to discover as she continues to erupt. So for comparison to the Pu'o era, here's Kilauea 2024-25. Here is Pu'o 83 to 86. There are some days where they could not get fountain heights because of weather. In their case, each fountain was about once a month. So this whole sequence lasting 3 years went through all the seasons multiple times. Right? So including the rainy ones and stormy ones and so forth. Overall, you see the pattern of it seems to climb up and then come down over time, right? And we don't see any obvious gaps like that, right? Except early on, maybe. And that was never part of what heralded any decrease in Pu'o. So that in itself does not seem to be an indication of any less lava or the thing ending. It's more the dynamics of how it's coming out of the nozzle, right? And mentioned before my analogy of having a garden hose, putting your thumb over the end of it, and spraying the lava or whatever the fluid is further higher because there's a smaller gap to get it out of. And just that could change the dynamics of the fountain heights without changing the volumes or anything else. So continuing to look at our fountain duration, 12 hours fits in line with what we have had recently. They seem to be lengthening a little bit, you can see here, since they shortened there. And in comparison to Pu'u'o, you can see that there was no climb up in duration at the end. It seemed to kind of stabilize, and it was more a matter of the fissures cracking a new pathway for the lava to pressurize elsewhere, right? And so it has more to do with the fact that it was on a rift zone than in the summit. That's where this comparison maybe breaks a little bit. So looking at the time between the fountains, I have this capped here at 14, but you can see that we're actually at this max of this particular graph. So I can show you this version over here. So this version on the right, the blue, is the post-episode pause duration. What I have on here is also how much time did we have since the first flows came out and that kind of thing, right? So overall, it's some measure of the full length of the episode with the buildup and the vigorous eruption part and the pause. But you can see here in blue lines, the pause at this one was the longest one, exceeding the one that followed episode 3 by a day or so, by a few days actually. So in comparison, interfountain duration, there's Pu'u'o once again. Don't really see that pattern there. So moving on to our current readings of what we saw and what we see coming next. Our laser rangefinder is back online, pointing to the summit crater. It saw this little variation, almost like a little tidal effect here on the rock that's on the crater floor sagging. We saw kind of on the time lapses seeming to sag in some places, not so drastically in this view. Maybe you see a slight decrease in this line, but it's not more than maybe a few centimeters on most, we'll call it. Then the flow of episode 30 comes sweeping across here. We see an immediate jump in the height of the land as the lava is coming through. Maybe this is a first little flow, and a larger pulse comes through of gas-rich lava, which comes and then essentially surges past, and the level drops again, and then we see it stabilized right around through here. So we're looking at in the range of 992.2 maybe, or flat 92 right there, compared to just below 991. So about a meter, about a yard of lava at this one point location on the crater floor. And coincident with the drop in tilt on the summit line, the East Rift Zone tilt at Pu'u'o, showing no influence whatsoever of what's happening at the summit. Just continuing to decline as it's basically sagging without magma inside. And our earthquake counts, you see they did climb up as we approach this episode. In more detail, there are, if I scroll down here to our earthquakes depth versus time over the last week, you see that this increase happening through here may be related to these larger events in Deep Pahala there and there. But that come the eruption window itself, we have these shallow earthquakes by the crater that are likely part of this one in particular, likely part of that fissure opening right there. And so that corresponds to this jump in seismic moment of the fissures, but also there were Deep Pahala events that seem to be picking up back to their normal average of the recent years. They had been a little slow for some time there. So our earthquake map, there is the summit earthquakes, there is the Pahala earthquakes, south flank events continuing at a small magnitude and seemingly a slow pace. For the last month now, zooming out, we can see this various step in accumulation of lava. So we just pointed out how we're just about 1 meter or 1 yard in the most recent episode 30. It's about the same as we saw in 29 at this particular spot. But you can see that going back to 28, that one actually had about a 6 meter increase, about 20 feet in that case, that flow added to that point of the crater floor. So there is our tilt once again. We've covered this a little bit already. And what's maybe a little bit different, we're picking up our Kamchatka earthquake, main shock, foreshock going back there. And what was a little different was this extra high rate of inflation just before the episode began. I don't think we've seen it quite this dramatic before. And in hindsight, the fact that we were able to do that and we had a new fissure breaking open seems to be related to me. So you see this is the Uekahuna station. So it's picking up the kind of broad pressure bulge building before the eruption onsets. If we come down to the Sand Hill station, as mentioned in the update, here we see not only that little bit of a sharper increase in inflation rate, but we see this actual spike right here. That spike, that is likely that 2 microradian signal associated with the opening of the fissure itself right there. So this station more in line with the area that was breaking, so more sensitive to the fissure location at the Sand Hill station there. And yeah, there you really see that right there, extra little spike. So if we look into the future, are waiting for episode 31, and we're waiting, let's say we see more of these wiggles and this extra slowdown here, and we see this extra speed up, maybe we have something to try to match it to or compare it against of what just happened now. Okay, so there is earthquake counts for the last month. Overall, within a background range, background is about 30 earthquakes per day. See, we're going up above it and below it, this whole range through here. Yeah, there we are, up and down within the normal ranges. Depth versus time, here we are. Once again, we pointed this out, a little bit of extra deep movement through there to go along with the shallow stuff. But overall, within that background range, that's normal. For the last 3 months, and for the whole eruption, see there's a pattern, a little bit longer, extra large decrease right through there. And in the full context of the full 8 months, you see there we are. We have had variations before. There have been some other episodes that had a little bit longer buildup and did not have high fountains. I want to say this one, 19 might have been one of them here. And since that one occurred, you can see we resumed that pattern until now, right? So these deviations can occur, and I think for me, my expectation is for it to still continue the pattern until we see something else change, right? However, with the caveat that these little changes we're seeing now, if we start seeing more and more of them, then that is building evidence to some shift in the nature of the eruption, right? We do know that's all based on magma coming into the volcano, which is doing at some fairly average rate. That's larger than before. And with this happening, it has to feed somewhere. And so there it is, making its way out of the system through the pathways that are established and easiest to get out of right now. So the GPS is still doing its regular oscillation up and down. This most recent range of excursion was about 9 centimeters there. So that's quite a, it's almost like an accordion, right? It's stretching out and squeezing together and stretching out and squeezing together in response to the magma building up and releasing and building up and releasing. And at Pu'u'o, we still see a little bit of noise in the data there, but overall it is a declining trend where it's overall a smaller distance, a lower value than it was 6 months ago, and no action and no imminent change on the Middle East rift expected there. So long-term pattern within the last 5 years. Here is our 8-month eruption. These are earthquakes per month. And you can see we're actually fairly low compared to much of the last 5 years. And even though we are oscillating and expanding the distance in the crater very slightly, that is a very slow rate compared to what we've seen for most of the last 5 years. And on Pu'u'o, contraction apart from one event, which was the Nepal intrusion and eruption back in 2024. So overall, looking pretty good. Lava seems to be still working its way to the summit. Not going to last forever. Things are changing. We're analyzing all the little changes to try to get some handle of when, how, what might happen, so that at the very least we can educate ourselves on what the range of possibilities are, how it can be prepared, whether it might be threatening or hazardous, in which ways, and we can respond appropriately as well. So that is the monitoring segment. I will just do a little bit of earthquakes fairly quickly here. There's not a lot to go through. There's our earthquake map for the last week. You see there are, let's see if I can make this whole thing bigger. Maybe, all right, did not break. So yeah, there's our deep Pahala events, all in the blues right through here. We have one shallower 2.7 on the southeast flank of Mauna Loa, and a magnitude 2 on this upper southeast flank of Mauna Loa. This is an area that sometimes has commensurate movement, sympathetic movement with Kilauea. And this Kilauea swells and contracts and swells and contracts. Mauna Loa is on the side, feeling that pressure increase and decrease, increase and decrease. While it also fills with magma. And so there can be adjustments that occur in this zone between the volcanoes. But zooming it in further and ignoring background events elsewhere in the island, deep events under Mauna Kea and elsewhere, there's our events under Kilauea that marked the opening of fissure, and a couple of south flank events here too. There's one shallower one all through there, but likely related there too. Coming to the last earthquake slide here, showing the largest magnitudes over the last 7 days. You can see that all of the largest earthquakes have all been in a deep Pahala zone. And I can tell that quickly by the depth. Anything that's in this 20-mile range is that deep Pahala zone, besides St. Pahala. So see everything on here, 3.2, 3.2, 3.1, 3, and all the ones below that, all the largest ones in a deep Pahala zone, which suggests to us that this is picking back up. It's been a little while since we've seen these big earthquakes in Pahala. Perhaps a response to the Kīlauea eruption, but perhaps more than just that. So that is our earthquakes for this week. Not the main excitement. And we'll finish it off here with our volcano watch for the week, which this week is discovery of a massive submarine landslide near the 1957 Aleutian earthquake epicenter. So the 1957 earthquake was a big one that struck March 9th, magnitude 8.6, tsunami Pacific wide, that hit Alaska and Hawaii. At Haena, Kauai, 53 feet waves. Yeah, that's serious stuff there. Hilo Bay got 12 feet waves. So lots of damage. And what this article is about the underwater survey that the USGS HVO scientist Ashton Flinders participated in, using the Alvin submersible, famous for a lot of research over the years. The Alvin can carry 2 scientists down to more than 20,000 feet, and it's been operating since 1964, although major retrofit in 2022, right? In case you're someone like Dr. Flinders, maybe. You can see that.
Oh, Phil, we might be losing you.
Oh, I saw something.
Yep, there we go.
Flicker.
Yeah, but you got a little issue. I'll just talk for a second. Hopefully, it steadies itself out. So yeah, one of the things that was interesting about 57 that I saw in this last tsunami was the hotel in Hilo that the viral footage was shot from on the last tsunami, where the guy walks out and the waves are right at the entrance to the building. That same building has sensors in the window from the height that it got in 1957 and in 1960. And it was, if I remember right, like 5 or 6 feet. No, those were 5 feet above the level that it was.
Dan, your mic needs to be closer.
What is happening?
Okay.
I've
Can you
got
say that
right
again?
here.
Yeah,
Hold
I only heard every other word or so. I think I saw Carrie struggling.
Am I lagging too? What is happening? No, I should be all right. All right. So can you hear me? Interesting. All kinds of tech issues there and a little flurry. So yeah, the hotel in Hilo. Yeah, the hotel in Hilo that saw the viral footage of the tsunami coming up through the steps last week or 2 weeks ago now. But that same building has stencils in the window, and about 5 feet up was the height of that 1957 wave, and then 2 feet above that, the 1960 wave. So it was really interesting, the difference, and hopefully that steadies out the internet for a minute. All right, go ahead. See if you're back.
All right. Yeah. All right. So So you can see that Dr. Flinders dove down to, in this case, a Russian volcano there, 5,000 feet down. They collected lots of samples. But one thing that's interesting, one of their more significant discoveries is a massive landslide about 10 miles northwest of the epicenter of that 57 earthquake. The landslide spans over 10 miles and shows classic signs of rapid failure. Right, and so what that means is, I don't know if you guys can still hear me or not. What that means,
you're cutting in and out. We should try and speed line this.
Yeah,
we're both having issues. The issues
right.
are
so come check out
stacking
this
now.
article. Come check out this article. What they're showing is they mapped out places where there can be landslides that are associated with tsunamis, have earthquakes that trigger tsunamis, can also trigger landslides that can also amplify tsunamis. Right. So when you have earthquakes that have extra landslides, you can have maybe extra tsunamis. That's kind of what they're looking at to look for here in the 57 zone. They also note that that was also a case in the 1946 tsunami as well, where they believe there may have been a landslide component as well. So interesting extra information here about our island threats from Volcano Watch this week. And yes, the gremlins are telling us to wrap it up here. So we'll wrap it up there.
All right. Well, we got through most of it before the tech gremlins came out. And yeah, we did have some questions. We can try those. But we'll do the speed run version of it. Maybe. Oh no, Phil froze. Oh, there he's back. All right. What do you think? Do you want to try a question or two? You want to just call it there?
Yeah, let's give it a shot.
Let's give it a shot. All right. Do you think that new fissure will reactivate next week or next episode?
Great question. It's just my personal guess would be no.
All right. Next question. Do you think the weird meandering...
seen the eruptions at Pu'o'o?
You're cut. We heard you say no.
Yeah,
you don't think so, and then you cut out, and the rest of it was gone. So, just speed run version of it. We'll try one more, and if you cut out, we'll call it. Hugh asks, "Do you think that weird meandering tilt graph before the final inflation plummet was caused by the lava forcing its way sideways to the new rift instead of back up because the south was blocked?" That might be new fissure. Or
without getting into the details of what, I'll say that I think there is a relation, and exactly like whether the wiggles go sideways or flat or up and down, that's something that's more nuanced that I probably can't get through lagging. But yes, I'll say it. I think it is related, And to add to my previous answer, just based on the history of Pu'o'o having lots of short fissures that did not reactivate during the eruption, that's why I would expect this one to not reactivate as well. But just completely guesses, just based on the context of history. Yeah.
All right, try one more. Raven asks, is there a chance that lava from the lava tube flowing under the cooled crust of the caldera would burst through?
it's possible that it could, yeah, I would probably ooze up and through, right up and ooze up and through the cracks. So that lava that's moving is pretty degassed, so it's not, doesn't have a gas to, like, so let's say, break a new fissure and start fountaining necessarily. But you might have one of those ooze up kind of flows where it leaks out of a crack and makes a puddle. It looks like a puddle from this size, but like a big pool of lava, right? That could be localized, degassed as well. Yeah, it's a great question. And so the fact that you didn't see that happen means there must be some space down there or not enough lava to do it. And so, yeah, those are certainly possibilities. We have seen ooze up flows before, earlier phases of this eruption, but we have not seen them in a while now. So that's an interesting thing, interesting change.
Yep. All right.
We don't
Well, that
see
gets us
lava injecting anymore. Yeah.
cutting in and out there at the end. So I think that might be the end of questions. And we will be back next week, our standard time, 5 p.m. Hawaii Standard Time. Unless something happens, a new episode does not cut it. But I don't really anticipate a next episode by next week this time, considering how long these recent intervals have been. So we'll see you next week, probably.
Yeah. The last two have been long, for sure.
Yeah.
Assuming the gremlins allow us to be here, we'll be here next week.
Right. All right. Well, thanks, Phil.
So, yeah. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate our ASL interpreters, Carrie and Dano, as always. Appreciate Lou Atori on the back end, production, helping out in the chat as well. So for Dane DuPont, I'm Philip Ong from our nonprofit, Hawaiian Volcano Education and Resilience Institute. Until next week, aloha, everybody.